1 year had passed since Dr. Elira Miles and Rian Solon uncovered the secrets of Elysian Vale. The Martian wind now moved freely across the ruins. The brothel no longer pulsed with false beauty or silent screams. The mirrors were gone. The circuits were dead. The Crimson Circuit had become nothing more than a dark part of history. But history, if forgotten, can return. Elira knew this better than anyone. She stood at the Mars Memory Archive, a quiet place built to protect stories from being lost. It was not a library. It was more than that. It was a living space for truth. Stories were stored here in voice, image, and thought. And today, Elira was ready to add the final piece to the Everhart case. She entered the recording room. It was a round chamber with soft lights and silver walls. A small chair stood in the center. She sat down and activated the recorder. Her voice was calm. "My name is Dr. Elira Miles. I was born on Earth, but my work brought me to Mars. I came here searching for lost stories. I found one buried in the red dust. It was not just a mystery. It was a wound that had never healed." She paused and took a breath. 400 years ago, 2 women named Lenora and Varel Everhart built a brothel that became a trap for human minds. They used stolen memory and false comfort to create a machine that held people forever. 93 women entered and never left. Their bodies may have faded, but their minds were taken to power something dark. She looked up at the camera, but they failed. Elira told everything. She shared how Cara Villen's echo had survived, how the victims had fought back, how the system had collapsed. She spoke with honesty and respect, never turning pain into drama. She ended her message with a clear truth. This story is not about fear. It is about memory. The Everhart sisters tried to live forever by stealing others. But the voices they silenced rose again. We remember. And by remembering, we protect the future. She stood up and submitted the recording to the archive. A green light blinked. It was done. The story would now live forever in the safe halls of memory, not hidden, not twisted, but told clearly with proof and care. Outside the archive, Rian waited. Near the transport, his eyes were on the red horizon. He smiled slightly as Elira walked toward him. "It's done?" he asked. She nodded. "Now the galaxy can know what happened. No more secrets." They boarded the transport and began the trip to the outer colonies. They had been invited to speak at universities and knowledge forums. People across the system wanted to learn the truth, not for curiosity, but to understand how something like Elysian Vale had been allowed to happen. On the way, Elira looked out the window. Stars passed by slowly. She thought of Cara Villen, a young woman who had entered the brothel long ago and never returned home. Yet even after death, she had helped end the darkness. Cara's name was now listed as the key witness in the official report. Her memory had saved others. At the first colony stop, Elira stood before a crowd of young researchers. She held up the Everhart logbook and began her talk. "This book holds the plans of the Everhart sisters. Inside it, you will find a system built on fear and control. But you will also find something else. A crack, a weakness, a way out." The students listened with deep focus. Elira continued. "When humans are trapped, they look for hope. Even in silence, they remember. Even in darkness, they resist. That is why no system can truly erase a person. You can bury a voice, but one day, someone will hear it again." Later that evening, she sat alone in the study lounge. Her data pad showed a message. Archive notification. New entry accessed. Someone had listened to her recording. Not just one person, but thousands. Across Mars, Luna, Earth, and the outer stations, people were reading about the Everhart case. Rian entered the room holding 2 cups of warm tea. "You're becoming famous," he joked. Elira smiled. "I don't want fame. I want people to care." "They do," he said. "They're asking the right questions now. how it happened, why no one stopped it sooner, what kind of systems we build today that might be doing the same. Elira nodded. Those were the questions. She hoped people would ask because the danger had not been the technology. It had been the silence, the fear of speaking up, the lies covered in beauty. Before sleeping that night, Elira opened Kara's file one last time. It now contained full memory threads, saved carefully. Not as data, but as a tribute. Kara's voice spoke softly from the speaker. You found me. You freed us. Thank you for remembering. Elira whispered back, you're not forgotten. In the morning, the journey continued. More colonies. More people. More ears ready to hear. The story of the Everhart sisters had changed. No longer a hidden horror. Now it was a lesson. A warning. And a victory for memory and truth. On the final stop of their journey, a young girl approached Elira after the talk. She held a small notebook. My name is Amila, she said. I want to study memory science like you. I want to stop bad systems before they grow. Elira smiled gently. Then you must always listen. Listen to stories. Listen to silence. Listen when something feels wrong, even if no one else sees it. Amila nodded. I will. That night, under the stars of a quiet moon station, Elira Miles looked out at the sky and thought about the future. The Everhart sisters were gone, but memory remained. And as long as someone remembered, the darkness would never rise the same way again. The past had been faced, the story was told, the voices were free, and humanity had taken one step closer to protecting its own truth. After the fall of Elysian Vale, the silence was heavy. No strange lights, no voices in the walls, no flickering mirrors. The brothel, once a place of control and whispers, now looked like a shadow of the past. But Dr. Elira Miles knew something was still missing. Something important had not yet come to light. They had broken the system. They had freed the memories. But the heart of the mystery was still locked. The Everhart sisters had left no clear records of how the Crimson Circuit was made. Elira believed the real secret was not just how they took minds, but how they started the system in the first place. She sat inside the research base just outside the ruins. Her fingers moved across the screen, pulling together fragments from recovered logs. Kara's file, now partly restored, gave her clues. In one message, Kara had written about a room hidden even deeper underground, a room she was never allowed to see. Only the sisters had access. Elira turned to Rian Solon. There's one more place we need to find, she said. It might explain everything. Rian looked surprised. I thought we finished it. The system is gone. The victims are free. Elira nodded. Double quotes, yes, but the origin isn't destroyed. The first piece is still buried. If we leave it there, someone might try to rebuild it. Rian sighed and stood. Then let's finish this right. They returned to the site. Beneath the control room where the Crimson Circuit had once pulsed with light, there was a small floor panel made of smooth black metal. It had no lock, no handle. Only a single handprint outline carved into it. Elira reached out and pressed her hand against it. Nothing happened. Then she remembered Kara's file. One sentence stood out. They only open the vault when both sisters are present. 2 hands, 2 minds. Elira looked at Rian. Help me, she said. Touch it with me. The system may still sense human patterns. Together, they placed their hands on the panel. This time, a sound clicked under the floor. The metal slid open slowly, revealing a long stairway made of dark stone. Cold air rose from below. It felt untouched by time. They descended carefully, their lights revealing old walls covered with strange symbols. The path led to a large round chamber. In the center stood a single machine. It was shaped like a chair, surrounded by a ring of wires and crystal plates. This was not like the Crimson Circuit. It looked older. Wires ran from the floor into the ceiling. The crystals pulsed faintly, showing tiny moving images, faces, scenes, memories, trapped in loops. Alira walked around the machine and found a panel marked with the names Lenora and Everhart. Beneath those names was another. It had been scratched off long ago, but part of it remained. Alira stared at the letters. "That's part of Kara's name," she said. "They didn't just take her mind, they used her to build this." She turned on her scanner. The signal was weak but still alive. Whatever this machine was, it had started the process. It was the original source. A small drawer opened near the base. Inside was a dusty book. It was filled with notes written by Lenora and Varel. The handwriting was sharp and neat. Some of the pages were still readable. One entry caught Alira's attention. Subject 0 shows perfect memory pattern. She can mirror others. She can reflect. With her, we build a new form of consciousness. A house of memory that never forgets. Alira flipped to the last page. It had only 3 words. We become eternal. She closed the book. They didn't just trap memories. They were trying to live forever. By merging themselves into a system made from others, they thought they could stay alive. Rian looked around the chamber. "So this is where it all began." Alira nodded. "And this is where it ends." She opened her datapad and linked it to the machine. The connection was slow, but it worked. She began copying the data. She would not leave the knowledge behind. It needed to be studied and recorded. But once that was done, the machine had to be shut down. Hours passed as the files transferred. The walls felt heavy, as if they remembered everything that had happened here. The machine pulsed slower now, like a candle running out of air. When the transfer was complete, Alira placed a small device on the base of the machine. It was a cleaner. It would remove all active memory signals and erase the last pieces of the sisters from the system. She stepped back. "Goodbye," she whispered. She pressed the button. The crystals cracked. The light faded. The machine stopped. No sound remained. They climbed back to the surface. Outside, the sky had turned a deep red. Dust blew across the ruins. The wind carried no whispers. The mirrors were empty. The rooms were dark. Alira felt a strange peace. It was finally over. They returned to the research base and sent a full report to the Martian Historical Council. The message explained everything. The history of Elysian Vale, the crimes of the Everhart sisters, the fate of the missing women, and how one of them, Kara, had helped bring the truth to light. The council responded quickly. They ordered the ruins to be sealed. No one would enter again. Not to explore. Not to rebuild. Alira saved Kara's file to a secure archive. She added a final note to it. "Your story is remembered. You are free now." She looked out the window as the sun dipped below the hills. The Martian sky turned gold. A new chapter had begun. But there was one more part left to tell. The world needed to know what had happened, and Alira Miles was ready to share it. The red sky above Mars glowed dimly as the sun rose over the hills. Dr. Alira Miles stood on the rocky ground, breathing slowly. Her chest still felt tight from what had just happened. Behind her, the ruins of Elysian Vale stood quiet. The lights were out. The system had collapsed. But her thoughts were far from calm. She had entered the machine. She had touched the memory of Kara Vilne, a woman who had vanished over 400 years ago. And somehow she had brought part of her back. Inside the datapad on Alira's wrist was a new file. It was small and incomplete, but it carried Kara's name and a short message. "I remember. Thank you." Alira sat beside the crawler as Rian Solon packed their equipment. His face was tired but calm. "You did something no one else could," he said. "You reached her." Alira nodded. She was still human, even after all that time. The machine couldn't destroy that part of her. Rian closed the last case and looked toward the brothel. "But it's not over, is it?" Alira shook her head. "No, The Everhart sisters are still in there. Even if the system is broken, their patterns remain. And now they know I can break their design. She stood up and walked back to the entrance. The doors were cracked, but not fully destroyed. Something inside still held power. Alira turned on her scanner. It showed small signals deep beneath the brothel's core. Like seeds waiting to grow. They're rebuilding, she said. Even after losing one of their victims, they're trying to come back. Rian stepped beside her. Then we have to stop them, this time for good. Alira opened her datapad again. She studied the files she had recovered. The Crimson Circuit had used the minds of 93 women to build the Everhart consciousness. But those minds were not truly gone. They were pieces of living memory, some still active, some still aware. They fed on human thoughts, she said. They took memories, emotions, and identity, but that also made them weak. Rian looked. Confused. Weak? How? Alira pointed at the mirror fragments near the wall. Because they became too human. Every time they absorbed a person, they took on more emotion, more feeling. They became a mix of voices. And now they're full of conflict. She opened another file. It was a voice log from deep inside the system. The recording played several voices talking over each other. She is mine. No, I am her. We are not one. We were better before, the voices argued. They did not sound like one being. They sounded like many trapped in one space. They're fighting each other. From the inside, Alira said. And I can use that. That night, Alira worked on a plan. She would build a signal based on her genetic link to Kara, a signal that could enter the system and confuse the Everhart patterns. If she could push that signal deep enough, she might trigger a full collapse. Rian helped her set up the device. It was small but powerful. It would send a wave through the network of memories, unlocking the pieces trapped inside. It would not destroy the minds. It would free them. At dawn, they returned to the core room. The mirrors were dim now. The light had faded, but the system was not dead. It was resting. Alira placed the device in the center of the room and activated. The air changed. The ground shook softly. The walls whispered. You should not be here, the voice said. You broke the chain. You are a threat. Alira did not answer. She stepped closer to the largest mirror and stared at her reflection. It did not smile. It did not move. It only watched. You used people, she said. You stole their minds and locked them inside yourself. But they were not yours to keep. The mirror shimmered. The faces of Lenora and Varel appeared one by one, sometimes together, sometimes apart. Their eyes were sharp and calm. We gave them purpose, the voice said. We gave them a place where they would not fade. You stole their freedom, Alira replied. But now they remember who they were. The device behind her beeped. Signal was ready. She pressed the command. The room filled with light. The mirrors cracked. The walls trembled. A sound like wind rushed through the air. The machine screamed. Not in pain, but in panic. We are many. We are strong. You cannot undo us. But Alira had already started the process. The signal spread through the memory field. Kara's voice echoed inside the room. We remember. We resist. We are not yours. Other voices joined her, soft and strong, young and old. They pushed against the system from within. The Everhart patterns began to break. No, the voice shouted. You belong to us. But Alira shook her head. I belong to the living. And so do they. The mirrors shattered. The lights went out. Silence filled the room. The Crimson Circuit had gone dark. Alira stood still, waiting. The datapad on her wrist blinked once. Patterns released. Network broken. Memory field collapsed. She looked around. The air felt lighter. The cold presence was gone. Rian stepped beside her. Did it work? Alira nodded. They're free now. All of them. They left the building for the last time. As the sun rose over the Martian hills, the brothel behind them stood like an empty shell. No lights, no voices, no more stolen minds. Illyra took one final look and whispered to the wind, "You're not forgotten." For the first time in centuries, the Everhart sisters were silent. But Illyra knew the story was not over. The truth had been buried for too long. And now, the galaxy needed to hear it. The halls of Elysian Vale stood quiet, but the silence was not peaceful. It felt like the walls were listening. Dust floated in the air as Dr. Illyra Miles stepped carefully through the shadows. Her flashlight moved across broken glass, empty chairs, and cracked mirrors. She had returned to the brothel with one purpose: to find the truth. Her guide, Rian Solon, followed behind her with a scanner in his hand. The machine beeped softly, picking up weak signals from below the floor. "I think the source is deeper," Rian said. "Something under the building is still alive," Illyra nodded. She had felt it too. Ever since they first left the brothel, something had stayed with her, a whisper in the back of her mind. It was not her own voice. It felt like someone else was sharing her thoughts. Someone familiar. They returned to the hidden stairway behind the wall. The door had not moved. The air below was colder now. The machine room still glowed with red light. The crimson circuit stood in the center like a heart still beating after death. Illyra walked toward the main console. The same message appeared on the screen. "Welcome back. Vessel recognized. Pattern detected." The voice that came from the system was soft and calm. It sounded like a woman, but it had no emotion. It was like hearing a memory talk. The sound sent chills down Illyra's spine. Rian watched the walls as strange flickers moved across the mirrors. Reflections shifted when no one moved. Lights danced across the floor in patterns too, smooth to be random. Illyra placed her hand near the scanner. The screen showed a list of names. 90-3. Every name belonged to a woman who had once worked at Elysian Vale and never returned. Illyra scrolled down until she found one. Cara Vilm. She tapped the name. The console paused for a moment, then spoke again. Subject: Cara active. Memory fragments present. Emotional core unstable. The words repeated. Then the screen changed. A mirror across the room lit up. It showed not Illyra, but a young woman with light eyes and short black hair. She looked confused, as if waking from a long dream. Illyra stepped closer. "Cara," she said, "I'm your family. I'm here to help you." The girl in the mirror looked around. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. Illyra placed her hand on the mirror. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the glass turned cold. Illyra felt a rush of thoughts. Her mind filled with images that were not hers. A hallway full of music. A woman smiling with empty eyes. A door that locked from the outside. Screams behind the walls. And the touch of cold hands. She pulled away, gasping for air. "She's inside," Illyra said. "She's still aware. Her memories are there, waiting." Rian checked the scanner. "The system is pulling energy. It's getting stronger." The lights in the room changed. They shifted from red to blue, then to white. A soft hum filled the air. The mirrors began to glow. One by one, they showed faces. Women of different ages. Some were smiling. Some were crying. Some looked calm, but their eyes were empty. Illyra stepped back. "They're all still here," she whispered. The voice from the machine returned. "They are not gone. They are part of us. They were chosen. They are complete." "No," Illyra said. "You took them. You stole their lives." The voice paused. "We gave them purpose. Their lives were broken. Now they live forever in us." Illyra felt anger rise inside her. She remembered the files, the fake messages, the hidden edits in the reports. Someone had worked hard to make sure no one would ever find the truth. The Everhart sisters had created a system that not only erased people, but also used their memories to build something new. She turned back to the console. "Let me speak to her," Elira said. "Let me speak to Kara." The screen blinked. Direct. "Link is dangerous. Risk of memory merge. Proceed at your own will." "I understand," Elira said. She placed her hand on the interface. The lights dimmed. Her mind became quiet. Suddenly, she was no longer in the machine room. She stood in a soft red hallway. Music played faintly in the background. The walls were clean and bright, but there were no people, only mirrors. Long rows of mirrors that showed strange reflections. Some showed her own face. Others showed women she had never seen. All of them stared back with silent eyes. Elira. She turned. Kara stood a few steps away. Her voice was weak but clear. She looked tired. "You found me," Kara said. "I had to," Elira said. "I couldn't let your story end here." Kara shook her head. "They used me. They told me I was special. Then they took everything. My thoughts, my dreams, even my smile." Elira reached out her hand. "You're not gone. You're still here. We can still stop them." Kara looked around. "They are watching. They never sleep. They want you too." "I won't let them take me," Elira said. "I came to bring you back." Kara took her hand. Her skin felt warm, like a real person. Elira felt a rush of energy. The hallway started to crack. The mirrors began to shake. Voices filled the air. Some were crying. Some were laughing. Some were shouting. Elira held on tighter. "You're not just data," she said. "You're more than memory. You're human. And I won't leave you behind." A loud sound filled the space. The light turned white. Then everything went silent. Elira opened her eyes. She was back in the machine room. Kara was gone. The mirrors were dark again. But the screen showed a message. Subject: Kara memory core released. Pattern disrupted. Warning: structural failure. Rian rushed to her side. "What happened?" Elira looked at him. Her voice shook. "I pulled her out. I freed her." Alarms began to beep. The system was collapsing. "We have to go," Rian said. They ran back through the halls as the lights flickered. The ground shook behind them. The crimson circuit was failing. Whatever held those memories together had begun to fall apart. Outside, the wind had picked up. The red dust rose into the air. Behind them, the brothel stood tall for a final moment. Then the lights inside went out. EmotionalVideo was silent once again. But this time, something had changed. One of the guests had finally left. The crawler raced across the red sand as night fell on Mars. The wind howled softly outside while the engines hummed inside. Dr. Elira Miles sat beside Rian Solon, both silent as they drove away from the ruins of EmotionalVideo. Elira stared out the window, but her thoughts were not with the stars or the hills. They were still trapped in the glass mirror that had shown her something impossible. Her reflection had moved on its own. It had smiled when she had not. And the voice from the machine had said something she could not forget. "We are not alone. We are not gone." They reached the research outpost by midnight. It was a small building, made for short-term visits, but it had working systems and a safe network. Elira quickly connected her datapad and backed up everything she had seen: video logs, voice recordings, the list of names, and most importantly, the Crimson Circuit files. Rian stood at the door, his arms crossed. "That place should be destroyed," he said without turning. Elira looked up. "Not yet. We need to understand what it really is." He shook his head. "You saw what it did. You saw what they became." She nodded slowly. "I know. But we cannot stop it if we don't understand it." She spent the next few hours going through the recordings. She slowed down the audio files. She watched the mirror frame by frame. And then she found something new. In the audio from the core machine, there were background whispers. At first, they were too quiet to notice. But when she filtered the sound, the whispers became clear words. They were not computer codes. They were voices, real voices. Women speaking in broken sentences. One voice said, "I was Kara. I am still here." Another said, "She wears my laugh. She holds my smile." Alira's heart beat faster. These were not just memories. They were pieces of the stolen minds still alive inside the system. The 93 women were not truly dead. They were trapped in a digital prison, used to build the Everhart minds. She opened the file named Merged 93 and watched as small files branched out like a tree. Each name connected to a network of copied memories. Every woman had her thoughts recorded, her feelings stored, her identity taken apart and added to a growing map. At the center of the map were two main files, Lenora pattern and Verepattern. Alira clicked on Lenora's file. It opened a video log. The screen showed a room filled with silver mirrors and dim red lights. Lenora sat in a chair, calm and still. Her eyes glowed slightly. She spoke softly. The first merge was accidental. She was broken. We saved her. We became better. She paused, then smiled. After that, we chose. Each one made us more complete. Their pain faded. Their gifts remained. Alira closed the file. Her hands were cold. This was not just a crime. It was a system built on stolen lives. The Everhart sisters had not stopped at one person. They had repeated the process again and again. They had taken voices, memories, laughter, and fear. And with every mind they merged, they became stronger. She realized something else. The system was still active. It had recognized her. It had tried to map her mind when she stood in front of the mirror. But something had stopped it. Why? She checked her own scan from earlier. Her genetic ID had been flagged in the system. There was a match, subject Alira Miles, genetic match, Kara Vilm, 87%. Alira gasped. She remembered the name. Kara Vilm was the worker who had sent the message asking for help. The woman who said the reflections did not match. She had disappeared. But now Alira understood. Kara was her ancestor, maybe her great-grandmother. And part of Kara's mind still lived inside the Crimson Circuit. That was why the system had paused. It had recognized Alira as part of someone it had once taken. Her blood held a memory the machine could not fully break. Alira closed the datapad and stood up. "We're going back," she said to Rian. He turned to her sharply. "Back? Are you serious?" "I am. The system tried to map me, but it failed. That means I might be able to get closer without being absorbed. And if part of Kara is still inside, I might be able to reach her." Rian looked worried. "You saw what that place can do. You saw the mirror move on its own." "I did. But I also saw fear in that mirror. It flinched when I looked into it. I think the system is not complete. It needs more minds to become whole. It's still growing." Rian took a breath and finally nodded. "Then we do it carefully." The next day, they returned to Elysian Vale. This time, they came prepared with stronger scanners and signal blockers. The air inside the building felt heavier. The machine room was still glowing faintly. The mirror stood quiet. Alira approached it slowly. This time, her reflection moved with her. It did not smile. It looked tired. She touched the surface. A soft pulse passed through her fingers. The voice returned. "Kara. Kara, blood remembers. Blood resists." Alira whispered, "I'm not Kara. I'm her family." The mirror shimmered. The voice changed. "Alira, you are new. You are clean, but you are marked." The lights in the room grew brighter. The Gaumbi machine started humming again. The Crimson Circuit came online. The files reopened. A signal reached out to her datapad. "Would you like to enter memory field YN93? Rian stepped forward. "Don't do it. This is how they pull you in. Elira shook her head. No, this is how I pull her out. She pressed the command. The lights turned white. Everything faded. Elira felt her body freeze, but her mind moved. She was inside the system now, inside the echo of 93 lost souls, and she had come to bring them home. The transport ship shook gently as it entered Mars orbit. Dr. Elira Miles sat near the window, watching the red surface of the planet grow larger. Her hands rested on a small data pad filled with old reports, security logs, and broken messages. From the past. She had read them all many times, yet every time she opened a file, the words felt heavier. She had one goal now: to uncover the truth behind the Everhart sisters and the disappearances at Elysian Vale. The Martian colony of Tharsis Prime looked nothing like it did in the old records. It was mostly empty now. After the great oxygen crisis 70 years earlier, most people had moved to safer colonies. The towers still stood, but many were dark. Dust blew across wide roads. Robots kept basic systems working, but the place felt cold and forgotten. Lira met with a local guide named Rian Solon, a former colony engineer who knew the area well. He agreed to help her reach the ruins of Elysian Vale, though he seemed unsure of her reason for visiting. You're the third person in the last 200 years to ask about that place, he said quietly as they rode a crawler vehicle across the old canyon path. One was an inspector. He vanished. The other was a historian. She went in but never came out. Elira nodded. I know, that's why I'm here. Rian said nothing more. They reached the edge of the canyon just as the sun dipped behind the Martian hills. Before them stood the old building, hidden under red dust and cracked crystal. The Elysian Vale. Time had damaged its outer walls, but its shape remained. The towers were tall, and the entrance arch was still marked with golden letters, though some had faded. Elira stepped out and walked toward the entrance. The air smelled of rust and dry rock. Her boots crunched softly. The front doors were still sealed, but with Rian's help, she used a power tool to cut through the old lock. The doors opened with a slow, deep sound. Inside, the air was heavy. The lights were dead, but her suit's lamp showed the main hall. The floor was cracked. Dust covered the glass furniture. A broken music device lay in the corner. This was once a place of joy and luxury, but now it felt cold and hollow. They walked deeper into the brothel, passing empty rooms and shattered mirrors. Elira scanned the walls for any signs of hidden tech. After a while, she found a metal hatch behind a painting. It was locked with an old biometric scanner, but her tools could bypass it. The hatch opened. A narrow stairway led down into darkness. At the bottom was a room filled with machines. The walls pulsed faintly with red light. Old data cores blinked slowly. In the center of the room stood a tall glass pillar filled with cables and neural ports. This was the brothel's secret core. Elira stepped closer. A strange hum filled the air. Her scanner picked up a weak energy signal. One of the machines was still active, though barely. She touched the control panel and entered a series of commands. The screen lit up. Access granted. Core memory loading. A strange image appeared on the screen. It looked like a spiral made of red circuits. The name of the file was simple.crimson circuit. Elira opened the file. At first, the screen showed patterns. Lines and dots moving like they were alive. Then words began to form. Welcome guest. New vessel detected. Preparing match. She stepped back. The machine began to glow. Rian moved forward. What is this? I don't know yet, Elira answered. But it's not normal code. This is a mind mapping system, like the ones used in early brain scan research. But this one is much older and stronger. The red spiral on the screen spun faster. New text appeared. Memory pattern stored. Vessel template. Complete. Begin echo reconstruction. Suddenly, the room felt colder. A voice came from the machine. a soft female voice. She screamed. They all did. But only at the end. Before that, they smiled. Alira froze. The voice sounded human, but empty. Like it was coming from far away. She looked at the scanner. The machine was trying to build a digital mind from stored data, a memory. Maybe even a full consciousness. She opened the file logs. Each entry was marked with a number. The last one was 90-3. It listed names, ages, jobs, and in the final column, one word: merged. These were the women who had vanished, not killed in the normal sense, not buried. They had been absorbed. Their minds were copied into the machine, their bodies removed. Their memories taken apart and used. But why? Alira found a final folder labeled Everhart base pattern. It was locked. She bypassed it with an override code. Inside was something terrifying. The sisters had not just used this system. They had fed it. Each woman added to the base pattern made the Everhart minds stronger, faster, sharper. The sisters had built their minds using the stolen thoughts and personalities of others. They were not the same people over time. They were a growing fusion of minds. One soul built from many stolen ones. That was why they never aged. That was why they never changed. Alira stepped back from the terminal. The voice returned. One mind, many voices. We are not alone. We are not gone. A new sound filled the room, a low vibration. The lights blinked. One of the mirrors on the wall shimmered. Even though no power was connected, Alira looked at it. Her reflection was delayed. She raised her hand. Her reflection did not follow. Instead, the woman in the mirror smiled, but Alira did not. She turned. Tyrion, we have to leave, now. He nodded. They ran back up the stairs and into the main hall. As they reached the doors, the building gave a soft hum behind them. Lights flickered deep inside. Something had awakened, and it remembered them. The red planet stood quiet beneath its thin sky. The Martian colony of Tharsis Prime was once the heart of culture and pleasure in the early days of space colonization. It was known for its luxury, bright towers, and hidden shadows. In the year 2210, one place stood above all others in charm and mystery. It was the famous brothel called Elysian Vale. Now, over 400 years later, Dr. Alira Miles sat inside her small research room on Nocturne 7, staring at a 3D map of the old Martian colony. The brothel had been shut down long ago, but its location remained marked in the Martian records. It rested near the edge of a deep canyon, far from the main city center. Its walls were made from red crystal grown under pressure. The design was old, yet still beautiful. Time had not broken its name. Alira used her institute's clearance to access security footage from the Martian archives. The files were old, but well kept. She loaded one of them and watched carefully. The video showed the lobby of Elysian Vale. Golden lights floated in the air like fireflies. Gentle music played, and soft laughter echoed through the hall. Wealthy guests entered the place, wearing long coats and smiling faces. The workers of the brothel greeted them with kindness. Everything seemed perfect. Then the Everhart sisters appeared. Lenora Everhart walked first. Her red dress flowed behind her. Her eyes were calm but sharp. Beside her was Varel, dressed in deep purple, smiling with quiet charm. They welcomed the guests with warm voices. They offered drinks and led people into the deeper halls of the brothel. At first, Alira saw nothing strange. But as she kept watching, something began to bother her. The sisters moved in a way that felt too smooth. They turned their heads at the same time. They stood with the same posture. When one laughed, the other did too. Not a second before or after. Exactly the same moment. Alira paused the video and rewound it. She watched again. The same strange movement repeated in other clips. It did not feel natural. She noted something else. In all the videos, the sisters never looked older. The recordings were years apart, but their faces remained the same. Their skin, their hair, even the lines around their eyes stayed unchanged. They were ageless. Not a single detail shifted. Alira took a deep breath. She was a scientist, not someone who believed in ghosts or magic. But the facts in front of her could not be ignored. The women who worked at Elysian Vale came and went quickly. There were no records of where they went. No one saw them leave. The colony logs showed that over 90 women had entered employment at the brothel. Only 5 had official exit records. The rest were simply gone. She found their names in old city files. They were young, healthy, and smart. Many had come to Mars for a better life. Some had families on Earth. None of them had criminal records. None of them should have disappeared. Alira searched for communication logs. Some of the women had sent short messages back to Earth before vanishing. Most of the messages said the same things. That they were happy, that the pay was good, that they felt safe. But one message stood out. It was sent by a worker named Kara Viln, just 3 days before her signal was lost. Her message was short and shaky. "The sisters, something is wrong. I want to leave. They watch in my sleep. I see reflections that do not match. Help me, please." The signal ended there. Alira leaned back in her chair. Her mind spun with questions. What did Kara mean by reflections that do not match? Was she hallucinating? Or had she seen something real, something the others had not survived to tell? She kept reading the old case reports. One document, written by a Martian city clerk, explained that the brothel had never been searched. The Everhart sisters were protected by high-ranking officials. They had friends in politics, medicine, and trade. No one dared question them, even the colony's own law officers were careful around them. The only one who tried to investigate them directly was Inspector Raisin Vole. He disappeared 2 days after requesting a search warrant. His report was locked. Alira had only seen part of it in the hidden files from the quantum drive. She checked again and found something new. The last log entry from the Elysian Vale's II security system was a single line of code. It had no timestamp and no context. It said, "Core pattern match. Cycle complete. Prepare new vessel." Alira stared at the words. They did not sound like regular security language. It sounded like a program had finished a task. And it was ready for another. She remembered the woman's voice from the broken audio recording. The voice had said that the sisters took what made people who they were. It was not just physical harm. It was deeper. Like they were taking minds or memories. Alira looked back at the videos. In one slow-motion replay, she saw Varel touch the shoulder of a young worker. For a second, the girl froze. Her eyes went wide. Then she smiled, as if nothing had happened. The moment was short, but Alira caught it. She zoomed in and enhanced the frame. The girl's reflection in the crystal wall behind her was not smiling. Her body smiled, but her reflection looked scared. Alira's hands shook slightly. She stood and walked to the window of her lab. Outside, the stars burned in the black sky, silent, watching. Something terrible had happened in that brothel. Something not fully human. The Everhart sisters were not what they claimed to be. They had used charm and beauty to hide a secret so deep that even time had failed to bury it. Alira had a choice. She could close the file, forget what she had seen, go back to normal life. Or she could follow the trail, even if it led into the darkest place in Martian history. She turned from the window and made her decision. She would go to Mars. She would find the ruins of Elysian Vale, and she would learn the truth.